Waking up in a villa that stretches farther than most streets in Rome, marble floors cold under your feet, frescoes staring down at you like silent witnesses to your fortune, the city buzzes outside your walls, chariots rattling, merchants shouting, senators plotting, and yet you feel trapped. Being rich in ancient Rome wasn't a simple parade of luxury, power, and lavish feasts. No, it came with a weight, a constant pressure, and a host of absurd, perilous, and downright ridiculous challenges that no amount of gold could fix. Let's be honest, we all think the rich had it easy. They lounged in bathhouses, tossed coins at beggars, and hosted orgies that would make today's tabloids blush. But behind every toga, every golden goblet, every ornate garden, there was a darker, less glamorous reality. Envy, danger, and the suffocating expectations of society lurked in every corner. Every gesture, every purchase, every word spoken could ignite gossip that traveled faster than a courier on horseback. One wrong glance at the wrong person, and your fortune could vanish almost as quickly as it appeared. You might think wealth was security. In Rome, it was a target. Gladiators weren't the only ones fighting for survival. The wealthy did battle daily, in the courts, in the Senate, even in their own homes. Friends were often spies, smiles were weapons, and loyalty was as rare as a clear summer sky over the Tiber. The more you had, the more enemies you attracted, and the less you could trust anyone outside the small circle of your closest family, if you even had that. And then there's the absurdity of expectations. Every meal had to impress, every party had to outshine the last, and every villa had to boast the newest, most exotic marvels. Peacocks imported from India, mosaics depicting epic battles, fountains that gushed water in shapes only an engineer could dream of. Fail to entertain properly, and you were not just boring, you were irrelevant. And in Rome, irrelevance could be dangerous. Social standing wasn't just vanity, it was survival. Worse yet, wealth came with responsibilities that could crush even the strongest shoulders. You had to manage estates larger than small towns, collect taxes from unruly tenants, and navigate political intrigues where one misstep could cost everything, literally. It wasn't just about having money. It was about protecting it, flaunting it, leveraging it, and constantly worrying that someone, somewhere, was plotting your downfall. The higher you climbed, the further you had to fall. So, if you've ever daydreamed about living like a Roman aristocrat, think twice. For every golden cup, there was a dagger hidden in the shadows. For every sumptuous feast, a whisper plotting your ruin. For every triumph, a hidden fear that the next disaster was already on its way. Being rich in ancient Rome was less about enjoying life and more about surviving it in style, a perilous game where the stakes were higher than any toga could cover. This is the story of excess, envy, danger, and the inconvenient truth behind the gilded lifestyle of Rome's wealthiest citizens. Welcome to the other side of opulence, where gold is heavy, friends are lighter, and even the richest can find themselves utterly, terrifyingly alone. The first thing you notice about being rich in ancient Rome is that you are never, ever alone. Not in the way normal people think of company. No, your wealth guarantees a constant, suffocating entourage. Slaves, servants, freedmen, and worse, relatives who would happily bankrupt you if given half a chance, all orbit around you like vultures circling a carcass. You might wake up thinking you're alone, enjoying a moment of silence, only to hear the soft shuffle of sandals on marble and realize that someone, or 10 someones, are watching, waiting, judging every move. Privacy in Rome, if it existed at all, was something reserved for criminals, soldiers, and hermits, and none of those groups had your gold. Every morning begins with a parade of obligation. You rise from your feather-stuffed mattress, probably the envy of half the city, and are immediately greeted by the lanista, the steward, the chef, and perhaps an astrologer who insists that Mercury is out of alignment and you shouldn't leave your house yet. If you dare skip the morning ritual of acknowledging them, you risk gossip spreading faster than fire through dry reeds. "Did you hear?" your neighbors might whisper. The rich man insulted his cook. Truly, he is not fit to rule his household. And in Rome, social slights could be deadly. An insult could fester, become a rumor, and then a political weapon. And that's just the morning. You still have the markets to visit, estates to inspect, slaves to interrogate, because yes, you can never trust your own property to behave. Fields of wheat can fail, vineyards can rot, livestock can mysteriously die, and your olive oil supply can vanish, often blamed on a scapegoat who barely survives your wrath. The irony is that the higher your fortune, the more precarious it becomes. A humble farmer can afford mistakes, the rich cannot. A poor man's misfortune is temporary. The wealthy man's is broadcast across the city in whispers and pointed fingers. Then there are the neighbors, a gallery of envy and pretense that would make a modern reality show look like a children's puppet theater. Every villa is a competition. Did your neighbor just import a marble fountain shaped like Neptune? Well, you need one shaped like Neptune riding a hippocampus while spouting wine, naturally. Did they host a feast for a visiting senator? You must outdo it with exotic dancers, roasted peacocks, and enough wine to sink a small ship. Life is a constant spectacle, a performance in which the slightest lapse can render you irrelevant, or worse, a target. Status in Rome wasn't a badge, it was armor. Remove it, and the daggers come out. Speaking of daggers, the wealthiest Romans lived under a kind of quiet siege. Assassinations, political maneuverings, and sudden downfalls were as common as loaves of bread. You think your coin makes you untouchable? Think again. Senators, former friends, ambitious slaves, all had motives. A rich man's life is a chessboard, every pawn a potential betrayer, every move scrutinized. Even your bodyguards and loyal slaves might see opportunity in your absence, and you can bet your family members are always counting on a favorable turn of fate, preferably one that benefits them. Being rich in Rome is like walking a tightrope over a pit of vipers. One wrong step, one careless smile, and everything you've accumulated could vanish overnight. Even pleasures come with a price. A bathhouse is not a place for relaxation. It is a stage where your social acumen is tested. Who do you talk to? Who do you avoid? How much wine is too much? How little is too little? Feast too extravagantly, and people assume arrogance. Feast too modestly, and you are mocked as stingy. Every gesture is a calculation. Every indulgence a potential political misstep. A simple dinner can determine your reputation for decades. And yet, the absurdity of wealth doesn't end there. Every household is a microcosm of Roman society, a drama filled with intrigue, betrayal, and ambition. Slaves whisper secrets, freedmen advance their own agendas, and your relatives hover, pretending to love you, while counting how much they'll inherit if you die unexpectedly. Children, if you have them, are not innocent. They are training grounds for future rivals, lessons in manipulation and pride. Even family vacations, or what passes for vacations in Rome, are exhausting exercises in performance. You cannot simply enjoy the sea or the hills. You must host, impress, negotiate, and, most importantly, survive. Worse, the city itself conspires against you. Fires, riots, plagues, and unpredictable politics can decimate your fortune without warning. One mismanaged tax collection, one misjudged political alliance, one disgruntled plebeian mob, and your villas, gardens, and gold could vanish into chaos. And the funny thing? You can't do anything about it. You cannot live in a bubble. Every investment, every estate, every business venture requires vigilance. You are wealthy, yes, but your fortune is fragile, delicate, and always under threat, not just from the outside world, but from the very people closest to you. So you begin to understand the first lesson of Roman wealth. Luxury is a trap. Comfort is a cage. Gold is both shield and target. Being rich in Rome means never stopping, never trusting, never relaxing, and always performing. You think opulence solves problems? It only multiplies them. Every coin comes with a chain, every feast with a trap, every friend with suspicion, and the higher you climb, the harder the fall. By the time evening comes, when the city lights flicker and shadows stretch across marble floors, you might think you are finally free. Perhaps you sip wine on your terrace, watching the Tiber glint in the sunset. But even then, a whisper reaches your ears, a shadow flickers in the corner of your eye, and the uneasy knowledge settles in your chest. In ancient Rome, being rich is less about enjoying life and more about surviving it, and the very things you love most are the ones most likely to destroy you. And so the day ends as it began, not with satisfaction, but with the quiet, suffocating pressure of survival, in a city that celebrates excess but never forgives it. Because surviving as a rich Roman isn't just about fending off enemies or managing estates, it's about maintaining appearances. And appearances in Rome are a full-time, soul-consuming obsession. The first rule is simple. No matter how you feel, you must always seem confident. Fear, doubt, irritation, these are luxuries reserved for the poor, who have no one to impress. You, the wealthy, are under constant scrutiny. Whether in the forum, the bathhouse, or simply strolling down the Via Sacra, every gesture, every glance, every word is measured. One misstep, a hesitation, a sigh too loud, and your social rivals notice. They will whisper. They will plot. They will use it. Confidence isn't natural, it's performance, and performance is exhausting. Then comes the matter of friends, or rather, the illusion of friends. Romans didn't simply bond over wine and conversation. Friendships were strategic alliances. A friend could advance your career, introduce you to influential senators, or protect you from a rival. But for every friend, there is a parasite, someone who calculates the exact moment you slip, hoping to profit. Parties, feasts, and banquets are not for fun. They are stages for diplomacy, observation, and silent negotiations. You eat, you drink, you laugh, all while measuring loyalty, gauging envy, and keeping mental notes on who might betray you first. Family is no sanctuary. Sons and daughters inherit more than property. They inherit ambition. Marriages are transactions, not matters of the heart. Alliances through matrimony are carefully calculated, designed to strengthen influence and consolidate wealth. And, as anyone who has studied Roman history knows, children grow up with eyes sharper than any advisors. They watch, they listen, they store every slight, every indulgence, every favor. By the time they come of age, they may be allies, but just as likely, they may be rival claimants to your fortune. Even a parent's authority is conditional on constant vigilance and negotiation. Wealth, of course, brings labor, endless, unrelenting labor. Estates spanning miles require oversight. Slaves must be managed, tenants appeased, trade partnerships negotiated, taxes collected. Your time is consumed by mundane operations dressed up in the illusion of grandeur. And while a poor farmer spends his days planting, harvesting, and living simply, a rich Roman's work is ceaselessly complicated by the people around him. One mismanaged vineyard, one failed shipment, one discontented overseer, and suddenly, whispers of incompetence ripple through your social circle. Failure is amplified when you are wealthy. Mistakes are remembered, not forgiven. Luxury itself carries hidden dangers. Exotic animals, imported foods, rare wines, precious metals, all require careful handling and constant attention. A tiger in the garden is impressive until it escapes. A rare silken garment is luxurious until it gets stained. A new bathhouse may impress visitors, but it is expensive to maintain, vulnerable to leaks, and constantly at risk of gossip. Roman wealth is conspicuous, yes, but conspicuousness is a double-edged sword. The more you have, the more you must guard it, display it, and ensure it isn't used against you. Politics, naturally, complicates everything. Senators, magistrates, and even wealthy merchants are constantly maneuvering, scheming, and plotting. A conversation at a party may determine your political fate for years. One poorly chosen ally, one overlooked rival, and your influence can evaporate faster than a summer thunderstorm. Public life is a performance, and private life is a battlefield. Maintaining influence requires calculation, attention, and sometimes ruthless action. In Rome, no amount of money guarantees safety. Status must be actively defended, daily, constantly, and publicly. Then there is the issue of security. Slaves, guards, and loyal retainers can only protect you so much. Envy and ambition are constant companions, and assassination, kidnapping, or theft are not unheard of. A wealthy Roman must always consider, who wants me dead? Who wants my fortune? Who is pretending loyalty while sharpening a dagger behind my back? Gold cannot buy loyalty. It can only buy temporary convenience, and the more you rely on it, the more vulnerable you become. Even leisure is fraught with complications. Games, chariot races, and theater outings require careful planning. Attendance must be selective. Who you sit next to, who sees you applaud, who notices your absence. A misjudged gesture in a public spectacle can shift public opinion. A misplaced comment at a gladiatorial event can alienate a powerful ally. The Roman crowd is a living, breathing judge of your every action. and the wealthy are its perpetual performers. Sleep offers little solace. At night, when the city quiets and shadows stretch long across the marble floors, the mind of a wealthy Roman rarely rests. Thoughts of finances, alliances, rumors, and appearances swirl endlessly. Slaves may guard the gates, but no one can protect against envy, betrayal, or misfortune that seeps through the cracks. Even the comfort of a villa, with its fountains and mosaics, cannot silence the constant, gnawing tension of survival. And finally, there is the cruelest irony of all. The higher you rise, the lonelier you become. People seek your favor, not your friendship. They court your wealth, not your character. They smile at you, but many hope for your downfall. In a city that worships success but punishes missteps, the rich are ensnared in a web of expectation, vigilance, and performance. Every day is a careful act, a negotiation with fortune and people alike. Wealth is freedom only in theory. In practice, it is another kind of prison. By the time dusk settles over the city and the Tiber reflects the fading sun, the rich man walks through his villa like a general surveying a battlefield. Every asset, every servant, every ally must be accounted for. Every whisper, every shadow, every rumor weighed against the cost of ignoring it. And while the world outside may envy him, and while strangers may marvel at his splendor, he knows the truth. Being rich in ancient Rome is a life of endless calculation, constant vigilance, and quiet, suffocating fear. For every coin in his purse, there is a dagger in the dark. For every feast he throws, there is a plot unfolding. And for every smile he receives, there is envy and ambition lurking behind it. Survival, it turns out, is the real luxury. Everything else is just a trap. By now, you might think wealth is simply a matter of gold, land, and lavish feasts. But in ancient Rome, the true cost of riches was invisible, threaded through every conversation, every glance, and every whisper behind closed doors. Chapter 3 dives into one of the most relentless and often overlooked burdens of the wealthy: reputation. In Rome, your social standing wasn't just a badge of honor, it was survival, and managing it was a full-time, exhausting occupation. A wealthy Roman's reputation was built on appearances, but appearances are fragile, like glass ornaments perched on the edge of a balcony. One misjudged gesture, one careless word, one slight against a lesser citizen, and the gossip mill would turn against you faster than a chariot race. The city is alive with observation. From the senator in the forum to the slave selling bread in the marketplace, everyone notices, remembers, and judges. And while the poor might be dismissed as irrelevant, a rich man's mistakes are amplified, dissected, and discussed endlessly. There is no anonymity, no safety in obscurity. Maintaining this fragile reputation requires constant performance. Every meal, every party, every interaction is a test of social skill. Invite the wrong person to dinner, and you are petty. Fail to invite a key ally, and you are cruel. Laugh at the wrong joke, and you are foolish. Remain silent at the wrong moment, and you are cold and calculating. The margins for error are infinitesimal. Even subtle expressions, a raised eyebrow, a lingering glance, can spark scandal. Wealth does not protect you from gossip. It paints a larger target around you. And then there are the rumors. Rome thrives on them. They seep through the streets like poison, quietly eroding trust and friendship. One evening, you might hear a harmless story twisted into accusation. A lavish gift becomes bribery. A generous act becomes manipulation. A private conversation becomes a public scandal. You can spend years building respect and influence, and a single evening of misfortune can unravel it all. The rich live in constant vigilance, anticipating the next rumor, calculating the next response, and forever asking, who stands with me and who stands against me? Family adds a complication all its own. Sons and daughters are both assets and threats. Marriage alliances can elevate your power or undermine it, depending on the ambitions of the in-laws. Children watch, learn, and maneuver. They are not just heirs. They are participants in the intricate chessboard of social survival. Even siblings can be rivals, subtly competing for favor or inheritance. Trust within one's own family is never absolute, and the wealthy know it. Blood ties are convenient, but never guarantees of loyalty. Politics, as always, magnifies the stakes. Senators, magistrates, and powerful merchants operate under the same brutal rules. Alliances are fragile. Yesterday's friend can become today's enemy with a single shift of power. A wealthy Roman must navigate these treacherous waters constantly, weighing every decision, word, and gesture against potential repercussions. Even those who claim loyalty are under scrutiny. Everyone has motives, ambitions, and desires that may not align with your interests. One miscalculation, and you are not just humiliated, you are endangered. Consider the social events, the true arenas of reputation in Rome. Banquets, games, and festivals are not mere entertainment. They are tests where every laugh, every toast, every gesture is observed. The wealthy must impress, intimidate, and influence, all while remaining approachable enough to seem virtuous. Fail to shine, and your peers dismiss you. Shine too brightly, and you provoke envy. It is a delicate balance, an exhausting tightrope walk that never ends. Even leisure is monitored. Trips to the countryside, bathing, and private dinners carry social consequences. Who accompanies you matters. Who sees you matters. What you say matters. And what you leave unsaid perhaps matters even more. Wealth turns every choice into strategy, every movement into diplomacy. In Rome, the rich cannot simply enjoy life. They must perform it, every moment, for an audience that never leaves. Slaves and servants, while essential, also complicate reputation. They are invisible extensions of your household, yet their actions reflect on you. A misbehaving servant can ruin a carefully constructed image. A rumor about a slave's indiscretion may damage your honor. And because slaves are both abundant and expendable, their loyalty is never guaranteed. You can instruct, bribe, or punish, but trust is always conditional, and discretion is always at a premium. Even wealth itself can be a weapon used against you. Excessive opulence invites envy. A mismanaged estate invites criticism. Minor errors invite exploitation. In Rome, there is no subtlety in observation, only calculation. Every citizen, from the lowest plebeian to the highest senator, evaluates, compares, and judges. And because the rich are targets, they must constantly act in ways that maintain status, command respect, and anticipate envy. Failure is public, relentless, and unforgiving. The psychological toll is immense. Anxiety, paranoia, and sleepless nights are natural companions. A wealthy Roman may lie awake pondering the potential fallout of a single misstep. Did someone overhear a private conversation? Did a guest misinterpret a gesture? Did a servant inadvertently betray a secret? The mind never rests. Even in comfort, there is no peace. The richer you are, the more intense the scrutiny, and the higher the stakes. By the end of the day, the wealthy are exhausted, not by labor alone, but by the constant need to maintain their reputation. They have navigated politics, family intrigue, public opinion, and the hidden dangers of wealth, and done so while appearing untroubled, confident, and gracious. Success is a performance. Failure is a public spectacle. And the most insidious truth of all, even when you succeed, you are never safe. Rome's citizens remember, anticipate, and plot. Every day brings new threats, new whispers, new challenges. Reputation is the invisible currency of Rome, more fragile than gold and more dangerous than debt. Without it, even the wealthiest man is nothing, and maintaining it is a lifelong, exhausting pursuit filled with tension, calculation, and quiet terror. The rich are never truly free. Their gold cannot shield them from judgment, envy, or betrayal. Every smile hides a potential dagger. Every gesture may be dissected. Every word twisted. Survival depends not only on resources, but on constant vigilance, performance, and foresight. In Rome, being rich is not merely about living well. It is about living wisely, strategically, and ceaselessly performing a role that the city watches with merciless attention. You may have everything, yet nothing feels secure. Because in a society where appearances are everything, the truly wealthy spend their lives dancing on a knife's edge, dazzling, commanding, and always, always at risk. The lesson is clear. In Rome, reputation is wealth's most precious and most dangerous companion, and even with it, the stakes are terrifyingly high. The rich may appear untouchable, but they are in reality walking targets in a world where envy is currency, gossip is weapon, and survival is never guaranteed. By the time a wealthy Roman has mastered the art of reputation, they face a far subtler and even more insidious burden: trust, or rather, the impossibility of it. In ancient Rome, wealth makes you a target, and being a target means suspicion is constant. You cannot fully trust friends, family, allies, or even those who swear loyalty. Every person around you has an incentive to advance their own position, often at your expense. And when you start calculating motivations, reading expressions, and weighing potential betrayals, life becomes a delicate dance, and one misstep can have catastrophic consequences. The wealthy quickly learn that loyalty is not an abstract virtue, it is a commodity. Senators and magistrates pledge allegiance only as long as it suits them. Slaves obey out of necessity, habit, or fear, but even the most devoted servant can see opportunity in an absent master. Relatives, the people you might hope to rely on most, are not exempt. Brothers, cousins, and in-laws may outwardly support you while quietly maneuvering for your wealth or influence. Rome is a city built on ambition. And where ambition intersects with wealth, paranoia is inevitable. The first test of trust comes with advisors. A wealthy Roman rarely makes decisions alone. Legal counsel, estate managers, and political consultants are essential, But their advice is rarely neutral. Every suggestion carries potential for gain or manipulation. Accept too many recommendations, and you risk being trapped in a web of dependency. Ignore them, and you may stumble into disaster. Even the most competent advisors can betray you, either actively by exploiting their position or passively through incompetence. Mistakes made by those you trust can destroy fortunes, reputations, and sometimes lives. Family complicates matters further. Sons, daughters, and spouses may appear devoted, yet the allure of inheritance can twist even the strongest bonds. Children are taught to be ambitious, competitive, and assertive from an early age. A parent may love a child, but the child is simultaneously an heir, a rival, and a potential threat. Marriages are political tools, and alliances can shift overnight. Siblings may pretend camaraderie while quietly undermining each other, seeking advantages in property, favor, or influence. Trust is conditional, fragile, and often temporary. Friends, or the illusion thereof, are equally treacherous. Romans did not cultivate friendships solely for pleasure. Alliances were transactional. A companion may laugh at your jokes today and conspire against you tomorrow. They may provide vital support, or they may merely study your weaknesses, waiting for the perfect moment to exploit them. Even minor errors in judgment, failing to recognize envy, misreading ambition, or ignoring subtle signals can result in betrayal. In Rome, friendship is a tightrope. Maintain balance and you survive, falter and you risk everything. Then there is the matter of enemies, which is never far from the minds of the wealthy. Envy is pervasive, resentment constant, and grudges endure. One minor slight can balloon into a vendetta. Political rivals, ambitious merchants, and even former allies may plot quietly, striking when opportunity arises. The rich live under constant, low-level threat, where danger is rarely visible but always present. Every interaction must be assessed for risk, every gesture scrutinized, and every word carefully chosen. Paranoia is not just common, it is necessary. Trust is further complicated by the household itself. Slaves, while essential, are not reliable in the long term. They may serve faithfully for years, but sudden opportunity, a moment of weakness, an absent master can prompt disloyalty. Freedmen, meanwhile, may retain ties, but often pursue their own interests. Managing these relationships requires constant attention, strategy, and negotiation. Even the most devoted servant or advisor is a potential threat, whether through action or omission. A single mistake can ripple outward, imperiling wealth, reputation, and personal safety. Public perception amplifies the issue. Rome thrives on observation, gossip, and speculation. The wealthy are scrutinized at all times, and their trust, or lack thereof, is not only a personal concern, but a public one. A poorly chosen ally or an exposed betrayal can tarnish your image, weaken political influence, and invite attacks from all directions. Trust, or its absence, becomes both armor and vulnerability, a precarious balance that must be maintained constantly. Even decisions about property and wealth distribution are fraught with risk. Estates, inheritances, and business interests can be manipulated by those you rely on most. Mismanaged assets, poorly executed plans, or misplaced confidence can result in devastating consequences. Wealth magnifies every error and intensifies every betrayal. The richer you are, the more people have incentive to deceive, manipulate, or exploit you. Gold is attractive, but it is also a magnet for ambition and duplicity. By the evening, when the city grows quiet and the moonlight reflects off marble villas, the wealthy are left with a sobering realization. Trust is a luxury they cannot afford. Every alliance must be tested, every word analyzed, every relationship carefully managed. Even the most devoted allies are measured against potential risk. Suspicion is constant. Calculation is perpetual. You may command armies, control estates, and hold influence, but without vigilance, even your wealth is vulnerable. This constant assessment of loyalty, motives, and potential treachery shapes every decision, every movement, every thought. Wealth is not simply a source of comfort. It is a web of obligations, vulnerabilities, and hidden dangers. Those who fail to navigate it skillfully may find themselves ruined, betrayed, or worse. Survival depends not only on resources, but on the ability to anticipate deception, recognize envy, and manage human ambition at every turn. Ultimately, trust, or the lack of it, defines the experience of the rich in ancient Rome. Gold cannot shield you, status cannot protect you, and influence cannot prevent betrayal. The wealthy live in a state of constant assessment, carefully measuring those around them, calculating risks, and remaining perpetually alert. The price of wealth is vigilance, and the cost of misplaced trust can be everything. And so, in the quiet moments after a day spent navigating alliances, gossip, and social obligations, the rich find that their greatest challenge is not the city, the politics, or even their enemies. It is the people closest to them, the very individuals who should provide safety and comfort. Trust, in Rome, is rarer than gold, more fragile than marble, and more dangerous than any enemy outside the city walls. By now, the picture should be clear. Wealth in ancient Rome is not merely an abundance of gold, land, or luxuries. It is an intricate web of obligation, danger, and ceaseless vigilance. But there is another dimension to the burdens of the wealthy that is less obvious, but just as suffocating: expectation. In Rome, the rich are not just people with money. They are symbols, standards, and, most perilously, public spectacles. And living under this constant gaze is exhausting, oppressive, and often terrifying. From the moment a Roman elite steps out of their villa, expectations dictate behavior. Every gesture, every word, every appearance is subject to scrutiny. A wealthy Roman does not simply walk the streets. They glide, or at least attempt to, with an aura of control, elegance, and authority. A misaligned toga, a poorly chosen expression, or even a glance in the wrong direction can ignite gossip. The city itself, teeming with merchants, slaves, soldiers, and senators, becomes a stage, and the wealthy are perpetual performers. There is no pause, no retreat. Visibility is mandatory, and with visibility comes pressure. Family expectations compound this stress. Children are raised not merely as heirs, but as continuations of a public persona. Sons must demonstrate competence, ambition, and the ability to protect and expand the family's influence. Daughters are instruments of alliances, expected to embody virtue, elegance, and political usefulness simultaneously. Every success or failure reflects not only on the individual, but on the entire household. Parents, meanwhile, are judged by how well they cultivate, discipline, and display their children. A single misstep, a poorly arranged marriage, a failure in education or etiquette, and the family's reputation wavers. In Rome, bloodline and conduct are inseparable from fortune. Social expectation extends far beyond the household. Banquets, festivals, and public appearances are carefully orchestrated performances. Hosting a feast is not a simple act of generosity, it is a declaration of competence, taste, and influence. A banquet must outshine all others, with exotic foods, imported wines, and entertainment worthy of admiration. Fail to impress, and ridicule follows. Surpass all expectations, and envy follows. Every public act is a double-edged sword. Even private celebrations, if leaked or observed, can become fodder for gossip. The rich live in a constant state of theatricality. Politics, of course, intensifies the weight of expectation. Senators and magistrates are scrutinized for both action and restraint. Decisions in office, speeches in the forum, and alliances made in private are all interpreted through a lens of public expectation. One wrong vote, one careless remark, and your political capital diminishes. Success requires mastery of subtlety, influence, and timing. Miscalculations are not just personal failures, they are public liabilities. Power and wealth are inseparable from the scrutiny that defines every move. Even leisure is dictated by expectation. Bathhouses, theaters, and games are arenas for social observation. Who you sit next to, whom you avoid, how loudly you laugh, how lavishly you participate, all of it conveys a message. Attendance is an obligation, absence is a statement, and behavior is continuously evaluated. Relaxation is rarely purely personal. It is a calculated performance to maintain appearances. In Rome, the line between leisure and labor is virtually non-existent for the wealthy. Every moment is a potential political act, social maneuver, or strategic display. The servants, slaves, and advisors of a household add further layers of expectation. They are extensions of the master's will and reputation. A minor misstep by a servant, a spilled goblet, a lost delivery, a poorly timed remark, can become a reflection on the household itself. Maintaining discipline, loyalty, and efficiency requires constant oversight. Even when appearing effortless, managing this intricate network is exhausting. The wealthy must remain vigilant, calm, and commanding at all times. Any lapse can compromise not just operations, but social standing. Wealth also imposes financial expectations. The elite are expected to fund public works, sponsor games, and contribute to religious ceremonies. These acts of patronage are not purely charitable. They are investments in reputation and influence. Failure to participate sufficiently invites criticism and diminishes political leverage. Overextending, meanwhile, can jeopardize personal wealth. The rich are perpetually balancing generosity and prudence, weighing social benefit against personal risk. Miscalculations are not abstract, they carry tangible consequences. Furthermore, the psychological toll of expectation is relentless. Anxiety, self-consciousness, and constant evaluation are natural byproducts of wealth. Decisions, whether trivial or profound, are never private. Their implications ripple outward, affecting family, allies, rivals, and public perception. Even minor mistakes are magnified, scrutinized, and remembered. Success is temporary, and the weight of expectation is perpetual. The wealthy learn quickly that contentment is fleeting, and peace of mind rarer still. Romantic and marital expectations amplify the burden. Marriages are political contracts as much as personal unions. Affections, desires, and private emotions are secondary to alliance, reputation, and strategic advantage. Infidelity, jealousy, and rumor are perpetual threats. Personal happiness is rarely a primary concern. Maintaining appearances, producing heirs, and navigating social pressures are the true priorities. Love, if it exists, is cautious, calculated, and often overshadowed by obligation. By nightfall, after navigating a day defined by observation, political maneuvering, social scrutiny, and relentless expectation, the wealthy retire to their villas. The fountains, mosaics, and gardens offer beauty and comfort, but they are silent witnesses to the exhausting reality. Appearances are paramount, and perfection is demanded in every gesture. The city may envy, admire, or fear, but it never forgives. For the rich, there is no end to performance. Wealth brings power, influence, and luxury, but it also chains the individual to a life of ceaseless vigilance, calculation, and obligation. Thus, expectation is an invisible shackle, binding even the most powerful Roman to the city's relentless gaze. The higher the status, the heavier the weight. The richer the individual, the more scrutinized the actions. Luxury is inseparable from burden, and freedom is an illusion. In Rome, even indulgence is a duty, and every gesture, meal, or celebration carries consequence. Gold and marble cannot shield the wealthy from the inexorable demands of society. In essence, the rich are caught in a paradox. The greater their wealth, the more they must perform, manage, and endure. Yet the very acts that demonstrate superiority also expose vulnerability. Expectation is omnipresent, relentless, and inescapable, and the cruel truth is that no amount of money can ease it. In the gilded world of ancient Rome, luxury is inseparable from responsibility, and every privilege carries its own hidden penalty. By this point, you may think that the worst burdens of wealth in Rome are visible: the ceaseless scrutiny, the treacherous friends, the obligations of family, and the impossibility of trust. But there is another, subtler threat that the rich confront daily: boredom. Yes, boredom. An insidious, suffocating ennui that creeps in despite gold, villas, and power. In a society where everything must be staged, calculated, and displayed, even pleasure becomes a form of labor. And for the wealthy, life can feel like an endless performance with no room for genuine spontaneity. Consider the simplest of pleasures. A feast, for example, should be a delight. Yet in Rome, even dining is a complex exercise in strategy. Every dish, every guest, every seating arrangement carries meaning. A roast boar is not merely sustenance. It is a statement of sophistication. Seating a senator next to a favored ally is not casual. It is tactical. Conversation must be witty, measured, and attentive to hierarchy. Misstep, and whisper spread. Succeed, and envy simmers. The wealthy cannot relax. Every indulgence is work disguised as pleasure. Hunting and games offer little reprieve. Chasing wild animals across estates, attending gladiatorial games, or participating in athletic contests may seem exciting, but these activities are laden with expectation. Who observes your skill? Who judges your bravery or generosity? Even in victory, recognition is mandatory, and in defeat, embarrassment can be public and lasting. Entertainment, for the wealthy, is rarely purely personal. It is another arena in which reputation must be curated, alliances maintained, and envy navigated. Travel is similarly fraught. Journeying from one villa to another, attending a distant festival, or visiting a city for politics requires careful planning and meticulous attention. Who travels with you? How are you perceived? What gifts are appropriate, and to whom should they be given? Even leisure trips are acts of diplomacy. The rich cannot escape the ever-present pressures of public perception, and thus every journey, even one ostensibly for pleasure, carries weighty responsibility. The psychological toll of this constant engagement is profound. A wealthy Roman can amass all the luxuries imaginable, yet still feel restless, unsatisfied, and profoundly alone. Their days are filled with activity, yet none of it is spontaneous. Every action is deliberate, calculated, and performed for an audience, whether visible or imagined. The mind grows weary under such conditions, craving simplicity, but encountering only perpetual labor disguised as indulgence. Even the arts, painting, poetry, music, and theater, cannot provide true relief. Patronage is essential, yes, but the wealthy also judge, critique, and oversee every creation. A commissioned poet must meet exacting standards. A sculptor must produce beauty that reflects the patron's status. Appreciation, while seemingly pleasurable, becomes a form of responsibility. Every artwork is a mirror of the patron's taste, influence, and discernment. Boredom, in this context, is not idleness. It is the persistent awareness that every choice, even in culture, carries consequence. Relationships, too, are a labyrinth. Romantic engagements, alliances, and friendships require constant negotiation, calculation, and observation. Genuine intimacy is rare because personal desires are always weighed against social and political repercussions. Marriage is a transaction. Courtship is a performance. Even love, if it exists, is constrained by obligation, expectation, and public perception. The rich cannot simply act on emotion. Every gesture is scrutinized. Every decision is strategic, and every moment of vulnerability is potentially dangerous. Consider the inevitability of ritual. Religious ceremonies, sacrifices, and public dedications are not optional for the wealthy. Participation demonstrates piety, influence, and commitment to the social order. Neglect invites suspicion or criticism. Attendance must be calculated. Contributions must impress. Even moments intended for spiritual reflection or personal devotion are transformed into opportunities for display and evaluation. Leisure, faith, and social life merge into an inescapable continuum of responsibility. Boredom also manifests in the repetition of daily tasks. Rising at dawn, consulting advisors, inspecting estates, entertaining visitors, attending political functions, and managing domestic affairs can create a relentless rhythm. The same challenges repeat endlessly: disputes among slaves, demands from clients, political maneuvering, and the management of wealth. Variety exists, but it is always within the bounds of expectation. Innovation, spontaneity, and idleness are luxuries the rich cannot afford. Each day is predictably exhausting, filled with activity but devoid of true freedom. Paradoxically, wealth creates isolation, which intensifies boredom. The richer a Roman becomes, the fewer equals they have with whom to share experiences. Commoners cannot understand the subtleties of elite life. Peers are often rivals or performers themselves. Conversations are strategic. Alliances are calculated, and camaraderie is rarely genuine. Loneliness and monotony seep into the gilded halls, uninvited yet constant. Even surrounded by servants, friends, and family, the wealthy may feel profoundly alone, trapped in a life where every action is both expected and monitored. Ironically, attempts to combat boredom often compound the problem. Exotic pets, elaborate gardens, imported luxuries, and endless entertainments provide stimulation, but demand oversight. A peacock must be fed and displayed correctly. A tiger in the atrium must be restrained. Mosaics must be cleaned and admired. Every indulgence carries its own labor and risk. Attempts to escape ennui through extravagance create new obligations, and the cycle repeats. Luxury, in Rome, is a treadmill. The richer you are, the harder you work for satisfaction, and the more fleeting that satisfaction becomes. The cumulative effect of boredom, obligation, and scrutiny is profound. It shapes personality, behavior, and perception. The wealthy may become cynical, irritable, or calculating, constantly evaluating human motives, public perception, and the consequences of their actions. Emotional detachment can become a defense mechanism, protecting them from disappointment, betrayal, and fatigue. Yet even detachment offers no true freedom. Awareness, vigilance, and performance are constant companions. The gilded cage is inescapable. By nightfall, as moonlight dances across marble floors and fountains whisper in the gardens, the wealthy may finally pause, but even this rest is tinged with tension. Thoughts of estates, alliances, rumors, and obligations intrude. Sleep is rarely restful. Dreams can be haunted by political threats, social failures, or domestic troubles. Wealth offers comfort, yes, but comfort is never sufficient to dispel the relentless pressures of expectation and monotony. Thus, boredom in ancient Rome is both punishment and consequence. The richer a person becomes, the more opportunities they have to alleviate it. Yet, the more labor, scrutiny, and danger those opportunities entail. Luxury, paradoxically, is a source of endless mental toil, and even the most opulent life can feel profoundly constrained. The truly wealthy may possess everything: gold, villas, influence, and leisure, yet they remain prisoners of their own fortune, trapped in a life that requires constant calculation, performance, and vigilance. In the gilded world of Rome, boredom is not mere tedium. It is an omnipresent, silent torment, exacerbated by the very wealth meant to alleviate it. Every indulgence, every pleasure, every attempt at leisure is overshadowed by obligation, scrutiny, and responsibility. The rich may live in opulence, but their days are filled with the unending labor of performance, expectation, and survival. Luxury is not liberation. It is an elaborate, gilded cage, with boredom as one of its sharpest, most persistent bars. By the time a Roman reaches the seventh stage of wealth's invisible torment, they confront one of the most insidious and often overlooked hazards of affluence: envy. Envy in ancient Rome is not a polite sentiment whispered behind closed doors. It is a pervasive, omnipresent force that shapes behavior, dictates alliances, and fuels plots. The wealthier you are, the more eyes are fixed upon you. and the more willing people are to undermine, manipulate, and betray. In a city obsessed with status, envy is a currency more valuable than gold. The first layer of envy is public. Citizens, merchants, and lesser nobles cannot help but compare themselves to the wealthy. Every villa, feast, and procession becomes a measuring stick. Even minor excesses provoke whispers. "Look at his new tunic," someone says. Does he flaunt wealth, or does he mock the city? A lavish party sparks speculation. Did he spend more than he should, or merely more than we can tolerate? In Rome, envy masquerades as critique. Public scrutiny is relentless, and the wealthy are constantly on display, judged not only by peers, but by those who resent their success. Family is another front where envy thrives. Siblings, cousins, and in-laws may outwardly express loyalty, but inwardly they watch for weaknesses, hoping to seize advantage. Children, even those who seem devoted, absorb ambition from birth. They observe how power operates, learn the subtle art of influence, and anticipate inheritance. Every action is noted, every indulgence remembered. The rich know that envy within the household is a quiet, persistent threat, capable of eroding alliances and undermining authority from within. Peers, meanwhile, provide a more strategic form of envy. Rival senators, wealthy merchants, and ambitious freedmen measure accomplishments against one another. A triumph in the forum, an elegantly staged feast, or a donation to a public work becomes a challenge, a question. Can you surpass him? Envy fuels competition, and competition often tips into sabotage. The wealthy constantly navigate these dynamics, balancing success with discretion, ambition with prudence. In Rome, outperforming peers is necessary, but excelling too visibly invites danger. Even friendships are complicated by envy. Those closest to the wealthy may appear supportive, but envy twists allegiance. A friend's success may prompt admiration one day and quiet resentment the next. Advice can be genuine or strategic. Assistance may come with conditions, and loyalty is always weighed against personal ambition. Romans learned early that envy is not just an external threat. It festers within relationships, twisting intentions, creating tension, and rendering trust precarious. The public sphere amplifies these pressures. Gossip, rumor, and subtle slights circulate constantly. Wealth attracts attention, and attention magnifies envy. A newly acquired villa, an exotic animal, or an extravagant garment may provoke admiration and fear, but also resentment and plotting. The richer you are, the more tempting you become as a target. Every achievement carries risk. Every display of success is double-edged. It secures status, yet invites enemies. The wealthy walk through the streets of Rome surrounded by invisible daggers, envy sharp enough to wound without a blade. Political life is even more perilous. Envy among senators and magistrates is relentless. Every speech, vote, and public gesture is dissected. Competitors seek flaws, exaggerate missteps, and manipulate perception to gain advantage. Alliances are fragile. Yesterday's ally may be tomorrow's adversary. Ambition and envy drive intrigue, and the stakes are life-changing. Wealth and status make a Roman visible, influential, and respected, but also dangerously exposed. The more you have, the greater the envy, the sharper the risks. Servants and freedmen, while seemingly loyal, are not exempt from envy either. They may desire personal advancement, prefer another patron, or covet possessions. A mismanaged order, a neglected favor, or a small oversight can spark resentment, manipulation, or outright sabotage. The rich understand that vigilance is necessary not only in politics and social life, but within the walls of their own homes. Envy, quiet and persistent, grows in shadows. Even indulgence is poisoned by envy. A lavish feast, an exquisite garment, or a display of artistic taste may bring pleasure, but also scrutiny. Guests evaluate not only skill, taste, or generosity, but also relative standing. Success is measured against peers, and excess is interpreted variably as ambition, arrogance, or recklessness. Wealth amplifies envy, and envy amplifies danger. The more you enjoy life, the more carefully you must navigate social currents. The psychological effects of persistent envy are profound. Anxiety, paranoia, and social hypervigilance become constant companions. The rich may find themselves second-guessing motives, overanalyzing gestures, and interpreting every interaction as potential betrayal. Relationships strain under the weight of suspicion, and even genuine pleasure is tinged with the awareness that others covet what you possess. Every asset, every favor, every indulgence carries implicit risk. Envy also drives isolation. The richer a Roman becomes, the fewer equals they encounter. Commoners cannot understand elite pressures. Peers may be rivals or performers themselves. The wealthy are surrounded, yet alone, constantly navigating ambition and jealousy while cultivating appearances. Isolation is compounded by the knowledge that any lapse can be exploited, any indulgence criticized, and any mistake magnified. Wealth is both magnet and prison, attracting attention that is simultaneously desired and feared. Ultimately, envy is a force that shapes every facet of elite life. It dictates behavior, constrains pleasure, and governs relationships. In Rome, the wealthy are never entirely free to act on impulse or desire. Every choice is weighed against perception, rivalry, and ambition. Gold and influence provide power, yes, but they also make one a perpetual target. Survival is less about physical threat and more about navigating the invisible currents of envy that flow through every social interaction. By nightfall, as shadows stretch across villa gardens and the Tiber glints faintly in the moonlight, the wealthy Roman confronts a sobering truth. Envy is relentless, unavoidable, and dangerous. It lurks in conversations, hides behind smiles, and infiltrates loyalty. Even those closest to you may covet your fortune, and the public always observes, judges, and compares. Wealth provides comfort, luxury, and influence, but it also magnifies envy in all its subtle, pervasive forms. In ancient Rome, the rich may appear untouchable, adorned in gold and surrounded by splendor, yet they are constantly navigating a world where envy shapes every action, interaction, and every choice. It is a silent predator, capable of destroying fortunes, reputations, and lives. For the wealthy, the challenge is relentless: to thrive despite envy, to enjoy what is theirs while guarding against the jealousy it provokes, and to survive in a city where admiration and resentment walk hand in hand. By Chapter 8, the tapestry of wealth's burdens in ancient Rome becomes increasingly intricate. We've seen reputation, trust, expectation, boredom, and envy, all subtle but suffocating. Now we turn to another, less obvious but equally devastating weight, the obligation to display wealth. To the wealthy Roman, possessions are not merely personal, they are statements, declarations, and public instruments. And this unceasing demand to perform opulence, to constantly prove status, is one of the most exhausting aspects of elite life. The display of wealth begins at home. Villas are not just residences, they are stages. Marble floors, frescoed walls, elaborate fountains, and gardens designed with geometric precision are all signals. Every element must impress, convey refinement, and assert superiority. But grandeur comes at a cost. Construction is painstaking, maintenance is relentless, and any flaw, a cracked mosaic, a wilting plant, a leaking fountain, is noticed immediately. A villa is not just a home. It is a public declaration of taste, power, and influence. Failure to maintain it reflects poorly on the owner, and no amount of gold can erase a visibly neglected estate. Furnishings and decor also carry weight. Luxurious couches, rare silks, bronze candelabras, and imported artworks are not mere indulgences. Each item sends a message about sophistication, access, and connections. But the act of acquisition, placement, and care is constant labor. Maintaining appearances demands vigilance, attention, and resources. The wealthy cannot relax. Neglect is visible, indulgence must be curated, and excess must be managed to avoid provoking envy or suspicion. Every artifact is a statement and a responsibility. The toga, tunic, and cloak are not just garments. They are symbols of rank, influence, and wealth. A simple misstep, a fabric of lesser quality, a dye that fades, or a poorly tied fold can invite ridicule. Jewelry, rings, and brooches are similarly fraught. Displaying them indicates status, but overdoing it invites envy, while underdoing it suggests weakness. The wealthy are locked in an unending balancing act, where even personal attire is subject to judgment and consequence. Feasts and banquets amplify this pressure. Hosting a meal is a performative act designed to impress, assert influence, and solidify alliances. Every dish, every seating arrangement, and every gesture of hospitality must be orchestrated. The hosts must anticipate criticism, gauge reactions, and ensure that all guests leave with the intended impression. A minor faux pas, a mispronounced toast, a poorly timed jest, an overlooked guest, can tarnish a carefully curated image. Even the most lavish feast is a form of labor disguised as indulgence. Processions, games, and festivals extend the requirement to display wealth into public life. Attending chariot races, sponsoring gladiatorial games, or parading in religious ceremonies is not leisure. It is a calculated exhibition. Every public appearance communicates status, competence, and generosity. Yet the act of participating requires coordination, security, and strategy. The wealthy must ensure that their display impresses without provoking resentment. Excess, or even subtle misjudgment, can be weaponized by rivals or envied by peers. Visibility is both opportunity and vulnerability. Even leisure and recreation are performative. Hunting, bathing, or attending performances requires careful attention to social optics. Who observes you? Who accompanies you? What impression do your choices leave? The wealthy cannot enjoy activities purely for pleasure. Every act carries potential consequences for reputation and influence. Private indulgence is often impossible because public perception intrudes on nearly every domain of elite life. Wealth also imposes obligations in the realm of gifting and patronage. Donations to temples, festivals, and public works are not purely altruistic, they are expectations. Wealth must be visible, contributions must be generous, and acts must be public. Underperform, and criticism hollows. Overperform, and envy simmers. Even charity is a calculated performance, and failure to navigate this delicate balance threatens social standing. The wealthy are perpetually negotiating generosity, visibility, and impact. Servants, slaves, and household staff complicate matters further. They are extensions of status, and their performance reflects on the master. A poorly timed mistake, a missed invitation, a minor error in service, or negligence in presentation is noticed and attributed to the wealthy. Maintaining appearances requires constant supervision, careful training, and unwavering attention. The larger the household, the greater the effort required to manage every detail of display. Every aspect of life is amplified by the weight of visibility. Even possessions themselves can be dangerous. Exotic animals, rare imports, and costly artworks require care, security, and supervision. A lion in the garden may awe visitors, but it also poses a threat. A rare silk robe may impress, but it must be protected and maintained. Luxury, while ostensibly liberating, imposes a perpetual workload, generating stress and risk even in moments meant for pleasure. Every asset is both status and responsibility, reward and burden. The psychological toll of constant display is relentless. The wealthy are never free to act spontaneously. Every gesture, every choice, every indulgence must be measured against social expectation, political consequence, and peer perception. Anxiety, hypervigilance, and exhaustion are constant companions. The richer a Roman becomes, the more intense the scrutiny, and the heavier the invisible chains of expectation. Isolation often accompanies display. Few equals exist to share the pressures and subtleties of elite life. Peers are often rivals, servants are extensions of responsibility, and public scrutiny never ends. The wealthy may live in opulence, yet they are prisoners of their own visibility. Every act of enjoyment carries implication. Every private pleasure risks exposure. Gilded walls cannot shield from the relentless need to impress. By nightfall, the villa is silent. Fountains trickle, torches flicker, and the wealthy may finally retreat to rest. Yet even here, the demands of display linger. Thoughts of appearances, social consequences, and the potential misinterpretation of yesterday's gestures intrude. Luxury provides comfort, but it cannot erase vigilance. Visibility, like a shadow, follows the rich everywhere. Ultimately, the obligation to display wealth is a continuous, invisible labor. Every possession, every meal, every outing, and every choice functions as a signal. The wealthy Roman is never off stage, never truly alone, and never entirely at ease. Gold, marble, and exotic luxuries provide comfort but also perpetuate responsibility. In Rome, opulence is not simply a reward, it is a task, an expectation, and a trap. Every privilege carries its own labor, every indulgence its own risk. In essence, the rich are imprisoned not by walls, but by perception. They are bound by duty to display, to impress, and to maintain a public image of perfection. The consequences of neglect, misjudgment, or imbalance are real, tangible, and potentially devastating. Wealth in Rome is simultaneously liberating and confining. Luxury is a tool, a weapon, and a burden, and the higher one rises, the heavier the chains of visibility grow. In this gilded cage, every day is a performance, every object a statement, and every gesture a test. Gold cannot shield against scrutiny, marble cannot prevent envy, and jewels cannot ensure peace. The obligation to display wealth is a subtle, omnipresent tyranny, shaping behavior, exhausting the mind, and quietly eroding freedom. And this, perhaps more than any other burden, is one of the worst things about being rich in ancient Rome. We have explored reputation, trust, expectation, boredom, envy, and the relentless obligation to display wealth. But there is another, even more personal and insidious cost of being rich in ancient Rome: the vulnerability to manipulation and exploitation. The more you possess, the more others perceive you as a resource, not a person. Every word you speak, every act you take, and every indulgence you enjoy becomes a potential tool for someone else's gain. Wealth makes you powerful, yes, but it also makes you prey. Consider the vast network of clients and dependents surrounding every wealthy Roman. The patron-client relationship is foundational to society. Citizens and freedmen alike rely on wealthy patrons for food, protection, political support, and favors. In return, clients provide loyalty, services, and influence. On paper, it seems reciprocal. In practice, however, it is a web of constant negotiation, subtle manipulation, and social leverage. Every promise you make, every favor you grant, is observed, cataloged, and later used as leverage. Wealth is not just an asset, it is a tool that others wield against you. Family members can also exploit riches. Sons and daughters, while appearing loyal, may subtly manipulate inheritance, influence, and social positioning to their advantage. Spouses may wield social and emotional influence to negotiate power, favors, or visibility. Even siblings who are supposed to share loyalty can become competitors for wealth, recognition, and opportunity. Wealth amplifies human ambition, and in Rome, ambition often comes wrapped in politeness and affection. Every intimate relationship is potentially transactional. Advisors, legal experts, and estate managers provide another arena for manipulation. These individuals are essential, yet their advice may be self-serving. A suggestion for investment, alliance, or political action could benefit them more than you. Missteps, even accidental, can be catastrophic if exploited by someone with the right motive. The wealthy must navigate a delicate balance between reliance and suspicion, acknowledging that those closest to their operations are often also closest to their vulnerabilities. Even seemingly trivial matters can be exploited. A servant's slip, a minor oversight in a household task, or an unguarded comment can become leverage for someone seeking advantage. Freedmen, while ostensibly loyal, retain agency, connections, and ambition. Their subtle maneuvering can alter the balance of influence, reshape allegiances, or manipulate outcomes in ways invisible to their wealthy master. Wealth magnifies these dynamics. The more you have, the greater the incentive for others to manipulate you. Public life further exposes the rich to exploitation. Political rivals, ambitious merchants, and influential senators constantly seek advantage. A misunderstood gesture in the forum, a poorly timed alliance, or even a display of generosity can be twisted into leverage. Rivals may feign friendship, conceal ambition, or exploit naivety. Success and influence bring envy, which fuels cunning strategies to undermine the wealthy. No act is neutral. Every decision is a potential vector for manipulation. Even leisure and indulgence carry hidden risks. Hosting a feast, attending a festival, or participating in games is rarely a neutral pleasure. Guests are evaluated for loyalty, cunning, and ambition. Every gift, compliment, or toast can be calculated to sway influence. The wealthy are surrounded by observers whose motives may differ from their outward appearance. A single misjudgment, a trusting smile, or an ill-considered favor can be used to entangle the patron in debt, scandal, or obligation. Religious obligations are similarly susceptible to exploitation. Temples, festivals, and dedications are not just spiritual acts, they are opportunities for social leverage. Public benefaction demonstrates piety and generosity, but it also signals wealth and influence. Priests, temple officials, and fellow donors may use these displays to pressure, manipulate, or extract favors. Even acts of faith become tools in a network of subtle exploitation. The cumulative psychological impact is relentless. A wealthy Roman cannot act purely on instinct, desire, or personal inclination. Every interaction is a potential risk. Every gesture carries consequences. Anxiety, hypervigilance, and strategic calculation become second nature. Trust is always provisional, and vigilance is perpetual. Even private moments of supposed leisure require careful consideration. To live rich in Rome is to navigate a constant battlefield of hidden agendas. Isolation is both a symptom and a defense. The wealthy, aware of constant manipulation, may withdraw from genuine intimacy. Peers are rivals, clients are opportunists, and family is not entirely reliable. True companionship is rare. Solitude, though sometimes restorative, can deepen suspicion and anxiety. Wealth, while providing comfort and luxury, creates an invisible barrier between the individual and authentic connection. Every relationship is potentially transactional. Envy, display, and manipulation intertwine in complex ways. The rich may be admired, envied, and imitated, yet these same forces make them vulnerable. Every interaction, from business dealings to personal conversations, is a subtle negotiation. Exploitation is rarely overt. It is often hidden behind politeness, flattery, and feigned loyalty. The wealthy must detect, anticipate, and counteract these maneuvers, or risk losing more than material wealth. Their freedom, influence, and dignity are at stake. Even well-intentioned acts can backfire. Charity, generosity, and public service may inspire gratitude, but they also create obligation. The wealthy are continuously managing debts of loyalty, influence, and social expectation. Every favor granted carries a future cost. Every act of trust may become leverage, and every relationship is a potential liability. Wealth is not simply possession. It is an intricate network of influence, risk, and subtle exploitation. The wealthy also face moral dilemmas. To protect oneself, one must be cautious, calculating, and sometimes ruthless. Yet excessive cunning risks social disfavor, distrust, and isolation. Navigating these competing pressures, ethical behavior, social expectation, and personal safety is an exhausting task. The rich are trapped in a cycle of vigilance, balancing ambition, generosity, and survival against a backdrop of constant threat. By night, after a day filled with negotiation, observation, and subtle calculation, the wealthy retire to their villas. Marble floors, fountains, and gardens provide comfort, but they cannot erase the awareness of potential exploitation. Thoughts linger. Was a smile genuine? Was a favor offered sincerely or strategically? Was a compliment veiled with ambition? The mind never rests, even in luxury. Gold cannot protect against guile. Marble cannot shield from cunning, and influence cannot neutralize subtle manipulation. Ultimately, the rich in ancient Rome are prey disguised as predators. Their wealth is both shield and target. Every possession, relationship, and action carries potential for exploitation. Survival is not guaranteed by strength, cunning, or intelligence alone. It requires constant vigilance, strategic foresight, and the ability to anticipate hidden agendas. In Rome, fortune comes with both power and peril, and the higher one rises, the more dangerous the world becomes. Manipulation, subtle or overt, is one of the heaviest, most insidious burdens of wealth. The rich are never truly free. Every act is scrutinized, every relationship analyzed, and every gesture potentially weaponized. Gold, status, and influence may provide comfort and authority, but they also attract cunning, ambition, and hidden threats. To be wealthy in ancient Rome is to live in perpetual awareness, admired, envied, and constantly at risk. And so, the wealthy navigate a world where human cunning is as formidable a foe as any enemy outside the city walls. Every gesture, word, and act becomes a negotiation. Every relationship carries potential risk. Every favor carries potential obligation. The rich are surrounded by those who wish to gain from them, and they must survive not only external threats, but also the subtle, relentless exploitation that accompanies fortune. In Rome, being rich is a constant exercise in vigilance, strategy, and self-preservation. The intricacies of wealth in ancient Rome begin to converge. Trust, envy, manipulation, expectation, and the ceaseless obligation to display status all intersect, creating a life both gilded and suffocating. Yet there remains another, equally ruthless consequence of wealth, the burden of responsibility. To be rich in Rome is to carry the weight of countless lives, social obligations, political entanglements, and economic dependencies. And this burden is relentless, often invisible, and impossible to escape. The wealthy Roman oversees estates that stretch for miles. Farms, vineyards, olive groves, and orchards provide not only sustenance, but income, political influence, and prestige. Each plot of land is a microcosm of labor, requiring oversight, management, and protection. Slaves and hired workers must be supervised, production quotas maintained, and conflicts resolved. The wealthy cannot merely own property, they must govern it, ensuring profitability while maintaining order and morale. A single failure, a mismanaged harvest, a rebellion among laborers, or a neglected obligation can have cascading consequences, jeopardizing wealth, reputation, and authority. Beyond estates, wealth imposes responsibility in the public sphere. Political engagement is not optional. Senators and magistrates wield influence that affects the city, the province, and sometimes the empire itself. Decisions carry consequences for thousands, sometimes millions of people. A wealthy Roman cannot act purely on personal whim. Every law supported, every decree enforced, and every alliance formed has ripple effects. Inaction, ill-considered action, or oversight can result in unrest, scandal, or even the loss of life. Wealth brings power, but power carries responsibility of a magnitude few can truly grasp. Household management compounds these pressures. Slaves, freedmen, and domestic staff are numerous, and their well-being, discipline, and loyalty require constant attention. Minor oversights, a poorly delivered meal, a dispute left unresolved, a gift misallocated, can escalate into tension, resentment, or outright rebellion. The wealthy are responsible not only for the work performed, but for the morale, safety, and social order of everyone under their roof. Even private indulgences demand careful orchestration to avoid conflict or embarrassment. The household is both a domain of comfort and a stage for management, and its complexity is exhausting. Financial obligations extend beyond personal desire. Loans, investments, and patronage are part of the social contract of wealth. Citizens, clients, and allies expect assistance in times of need. Failure to provide resources can damage reputation, provoke resentment, and jeopardize alliances. Yet, overextension threatens the very fortune that supports these obligations. Balancing generosity, strategic support, and personal security requires careful planning, foresight, and constant vigilance. The wealthy walk a tightrope where every act of giving carries both risk and reward. The psychological weight of responsibility is relentless. The wealthy must anticipate the consequences of their actions, predict the behavior of allies and rivals, and remain vigilant against threats both visible and hidden. Mistakes are rarely isolated. They ripple outward, affecting family, dependents, and social networks. Anxiety and self-monitoring become second nature, as the repercussions of misjudgment can be severe, sometimes irreversible. Sleep, leisure, and private enjoyment are tainted by the ever-present awareness of duty. Responsibility extends to public perception. The wealthy are scrutinized not only for their decisions, but for the outcomes of their actions. A failed political initiative, a poorly managed festival, or a public dispute reflects not only on competence, but on character. Reputation, carefully cultivated over years, can be undermined in an instant. The rich are constantly evaluating how others interpret their actions, adjusting behavior to maintain authority, credibility, and influence. The burden is invisible, yet omnipresent. Even alliances carry weighty obligations. Friends, relatives, political partners, and clients expect reciprocity, loyalty, and advocacy. A favor granted demands gratitude and action in return. A slight can provoke long-lasting resentment. Managing these relationships is a form of labor, as intricate as estate management or political maneuvering. Every gesture is calculated. every word weighed, and every promise remembered. The wealthy must navigate a labyrinth of social, political, and personal responsibilities simultaneously. Education and mentorship contribute further layers of obligation. Sons and daughters, groomed for influence and competence, require instruction, oversight, and guidance. Tutors must be managed, lessons monitored, and character shaped according to social and political norms. Failure to cultivate heirs threatens the family legacy and exposes the wealthy to future vulnerability. The responsibility for continuity, reputation, and influence is heavy and unrelenting. Religious and civic duties intensify the pressure. Sponsoring games, contributing to temples, and participating in ceremonies are expected demonstrations of piety and generosity. These acts are visible, public, and symbolic. A misstep, a forgotten festival, an inadequately funded ritual, or a poorly executed donation carries social consequence. Even devotion, which might ideally be personal, is transformed into an obligation that must be performed flawlessly. Religion, in this sense, is both privilege and duty, blending spiritual life with social accountability. The cumulative effect of these responsibilities is psychological exhaustion. The wealthy live in constant awareness that every choice matters, every act is scrutinized, and every oversight carries consequence. Personal desires, whims, and pleasures are secondary to obligations imposed by fortune. Autonomy is an illusion, freedom is constrained by duty, and even privacy is a careful negotiation. Wealth provides the tools to manage these burdens, but does not eliminate them. Isolation often accompanies responsibility. The more one manages, protects, and guides, the fewer equals exist to share insight, experience, or companionship. Peers may offer advice, but they are often rivals. Family may provide support, yet they too are entwined in the web of obligation. Even trusted advisors require oversight, vigilance, and sometimes correction. The wealthy may be surrounded, yet profoundly alone in the weight they bear. Ultimately, the burden of responsibility is both invisible and unavoidable. It encompasses property, family, dependence, political influence, social obligations, and public perception. Wealth magnifies every action, intensifies every consequence, and transforms every interaction into a potential source of risk or reward. The rich are constantly navigating a complex network of obligations, weighing decisions against immediate needs and long-term consequences. Survival, influence, and reputation are all contingent on the ability to manage these responsibilities. By night, as the villa falls quiet and fountains murmur in the gardens, the wealthy may attempt to rest. Yet the mind remains active, replaying decisions, anticipating challenges, and calculating strategies. Gold and estates provide comfort, yet they cannot relieve the weight of the lives, fortunes, and obligations that depend on the master's vigilance. Wealth is not merely privilege. It is a relentless, multifaceted responsibility that defines every moment, every choice, and every relationship. In ancient Rome, to be rich is to wield power intertwined with obligation. Influence cannot be exercised lightly. Estates cannot be managed passively. Social networks cannot be ignored. Every asset, every relationship, and every decision carries consequence. Luxury may soften the burden, but it cannot eliminate it. Responsibility is constant, exhausting, and often invisible to the casual observer. And so, the wealthy navigate a world where privilege is inseparable from duty, where gold brings both power and obligation, and where the weight of responsibility is a perpetual, inescapable reality. To be rich in Rome is not simply to live well, it is to carry the lives, expectations, and fortunes of many on one's own shoulders every single day. The cumulative pressures of wealth in ancient Rome, expectation, envy, obligation, boredom, manipulation, and responsibility have created a world both gilded and perilous. Yet there is one particularly cruel reality that many of the wealthy confront: the fragility of fortune. No matter how vast the estates, how glittering the treasures, or how extensive the influence, wealth in Rome is precarious, constantly threatened by politics, family disputes, economic instability, and sheer chance. It is a gilded cliff, beautiful to behold, but terrifyingly unstable beneath the feet. Consider the role of politics in wealth's fragility. Even the most prudent and influential Roman must navigate shifting alliances, rivalries, and the whims of powerful magistrates. A decree passed in the Senate, a new law favoring a rival, or a public scandal can quickly devalue property, undermine influence, or ruin reputation. Influence is never permanent. It ebbs and flows like the Tiber, and the wealthy are constantly monitoring currents that are as treacherous as they are invisible. Gold cannot shield a family from political storms, and no villa is immune to the consequences of a misaligned alliance. Family disputes amplify this instability. Wealth creates competition among heirs and relatives, even among those ostensibly devoted to the family's legacy. Sons, daughters, siblings, and cousins may contest inheritances, challenge authority, or maneuver for advantage. Subtle rivalries, misinterpreted gestures, or perceived favoritism can ignite conflicts that consume fortunes. In some cases, these disputes escalate into open legal battles or public quarrels, eroding wealth, influence, and dignity simultaneously. Even when handled skillfully, family politics demand constant vigilance. Wealth is never solely one's own. It is communal, relational, and vulnerable to internal fracture. Economic factors add another layer of fragility. Agriculture, trade, and investments, the foundations of Roman wealth, are subject to forces beyond any individual's control. A poor harvest, pestilence, or sudden shift in market prices can decimate income. Trade disruptions, pirate raids, or political instability in distant provinces can reduce fortunes overnight. Wealth in Rome is not a static possession. It is an ecosystem constantly threatened by the unpredictable rhythms of the world. Even prudence and planning cannot guarantee security. The social dimension further undermines stability. Public perception can shift swiftly. A rumor, a slight misstep, or an improvised joke misinterpreted in the forum can spark scandal. The wealthy are perpetually visible, and even minor actions may provoke criticism or envy. Reputation, carefully curated over decades, can be eroded by gossip, misrepresentation, or opportunistic rivals. Wealth alone does not protect against social turbulence. It magnifies vulnerability by making the individual a target. Legal challenges are another hidden threat. Roman law, while sophisticated, is intricate, and disputes can arise over property, contracts, and obligations. Rivals, clients, or even family members may exploit ambiguities for personal gain. Lawsuits are time-consuming, expensive, and socially precarious. A wealthy Roman may spend years defending a claim or navigating legal loopholes, diverting attention and resources from other pursuits. Legal battles are rarely straightforward, and the wealthy are always exposed to the cunning of adversaries seeking advantage. Even health crises can destabilize wealth. The death of a head of household, illness of heirs, or sudden incapacity can disrupt management, provoke disputes, and invite opportunists. Estates may falter, clients may desert, and rivals may act with strategic timing to exploit vulnerabilities. Wealth is intimately tied to the person who commands it. When that person falters, fortunes can unravel rapidly. Gold cannot replace leadership, nor can marble defend against misfortune. Luxury itself is not immune to fragility. Exotic imports, priceless artworks, and rare animals require careful maintenance. Theft, accident, or neglect can instantly diminish value and prestige. The acquisition of these treasures may have involved political risk, economic calculation, or social maneuvering. Losing them can undo years of careful effort. The display of wealth, while a source of power and status, also exposes vulnerability. Every asset carries both symbolic and practical risk. Emotional and psychological fragility compounds material risk. The wealthy, aware of how quickly fortune can shift, live with a constant tension between pride and fear. Every decision is measured against potential loss. Every indulgence is tempered by caution. Anxiety, hypervigilance, and distrust are natural byproducts of wealth's precariousness. Even amidst abundance, the mind is alert to threat, loss, and instability. Luxury offers comfort, but cannot relieve the constant awareness of how easily it can vanish. Friendships, alliances, and patronage networks, vital to maintaining power, are similarly fragile. Allies may become rivals, clients may turn opportunistic, and friendships may falter under the pressure of ambition or envy. Every relationship requires careful management, negotiation, and observation. The wealthy cannot assume loyalty. It is provisional and contingent. Trust is a strategic resource, not an emotional guarantee. Wealth provides influence, but also exposes the individual to betrayal. Historical events underscore the precariousness of fortune. In Rome, entire families have fallen from prominence due to miscalculation, bad timing, or political misfortune. Estates are seized, alliances dissolved, and reputations destroyed. One day of misfortune, one poorly timed action, or one misinterpreted gesture can reverse decades of careful accumulation. The rich are constantly aware that no amount of gold can guarantee permanence. Their position is as volatile as the city itself. Even the act of death, inevitable and impartial, threatens wealth's stability. The passing of a wealthy individual often triggers disputes, succession crises, and legal battles. Inheritance is rarely simple. Wills can be contested, heirs may be unprepared, and family networks may fracture. Estates that took decades to build can collapse under mismanagement or conflict. Wealth is only as secure as the systems and people entrusted to maintain it, and these systems are fragile, human, and fallible. By nightfall, the wealthy Roman contemplates this fragility in quiet, candle-lit solitude. Gold glimmers, marble gleams, and frescoes depict serene mythologies. Yet the mind cannot rest. Every decision made today could unravel tomorrow. Every alliance carries risk. Every gesture invites interpretation, and every fortune is temporary. Wealth is simultaneously protection and exposure, power and vulnerability. The higher the status, the more visible, and the more precarious the position. In conclusion, the fragility of fortune is among the most harrowing aspects of wealth in ancient Rome. Riches provide comfort, influence, and prestige, but they are never secure. Politics, family, economics, social perception, legal challenges, and health crises threaten continuity. Every asset, relationship, and decision carries potential for reversal. To be wealthy is to live with beauty and terror intertwined, to enjoy abundance while constantly fearing loss. Fortune is a cliff, dazzling to behold, exhilarating to climb, and terrifyingly unstable underfoot. In Rome, the rich may command empires, estates, and treasures, yet they are perpetually aware that all can be lost. Gold cannot anchor loyalty, marble cannot prevent misfortune, and influence cannot guarantee stability. The wealthiest lives are gilded and magnificent, yet terrifyingly fragile. And it is this fragility, invisible to the outsider, yet omnipresent to the insider, that ensures that no matter how high one climbs, the view is always tempered by peril. By this point, the wealthy Roman knows that life is never simple, never private, and never free from obligation. The burdens we've examined, reputation, envy, boredom, manipulation, responsibility, and fragility, converge to form a kind of perpetual tension. Yet there remains one of the cruelest, most intimate pressures of wealth, the constant performance of morality. In a society obsessed with virtue, piety, and honor, the rich are never merely rich. They are expected to exemplify the highest standards of behavior, and failure is visible, public, and punishing. Every action, even the smallest, carries moral weight. Patronage is a prime example. A wealthy Roman must support clients, friends, and dependents. But the act is never purely altruistic. Charity is scrutinized, gifts are measured, and generosity is interpreted as either genuine or manipulative. Neglecting obligation can provoke scandal, resentment, or outright hostility. Yet overindulgence may be seen as arrogance, extravagance, or a bid for dominance. The rich cannot act with simple kindness. Every gesture is a negotiation between sincerity and appearance. Religious observance is another arena of moral performance. Temples, festivals, and sacrifices are not only spiritual acts, but social obligations. The wealthy are expected to contribute generously, participate visibly, and demonstrate piety. Miss a festival, offer insufficient resources, or perform rituals clumsily, and the consequences can range from social judgment to political disadvantage. Even faith becomes a kind of theater, a constant reminder that morality is public property in Rome, and the rich are its most visible performers. Public conduct amplifies this pressure. Speech, dress, and demeanor are continuously observed, recorded, and interpreted. The wealthy must display temperance, wisdom, and courage, even when private impulses conflict. A momentary lapse, a sarcastic remark, a poorly timed jest, or an impulsive indulgence can damage reputation and influence. Morality is a performance with no intermission. The audience is relentless, and the stakes are personal, social, and political. Family dynamics complicate matters further. Children, spouses, and relatives expect guidance and leadership grounded in both virtue and prudence. Fathers are judged on their ability to educate heirs, provide for dependents, and maintain household harmony. Mothers, while less politically visible, are scrutinized for their management of domestic affairs, social influence, and alliances. Every decision within the family reflects on moral character. Failure to uphold standards risks both reputation and internal stability, as relatives observe, learn, and sometimes manipulate the consequences. Friendship and social alliances also demand moral attention. Loyalty, honor, and fairness must be carefully balanced against ambition, envy, and personal gain. Misjudging a friend's intentions, failing to reciprocate favors, or neglecting a social obligation can provoke resentment, subtle sabotage, or open confrontation. The rich are constantly weighing action against consequence, intention against perception. Morality becomes a strategic asset, carefully managed like estates or finances. Even leisure is infused with ethical performance. Hunting, games, and banquets are not neutral. They are opportunities to demonstrate taste, restraint, and generosity. Excess can be criticized as decadence. Insufficiency can be seen as stinginess or weakness. Guests, clients, and observers analyze every detail. To enjoy pleasure without judgment is nearly impossible. The wealthy must calculate social optics in every indulgence, turning freedom into labor and amusement into strategy. Economic dealings carry moral scrutiny as well. Trade, investment, and contracts are observed for fairness, manipulation, and ethics. A deal perceived as exploitative can damage reputation. One judged overly cautious may invite criticism for cowardice. Wealth is inseparable from moral responsibility. Every transaction is an assessment of character as much as competence. The rich are perpetually accountable, not only for success, but for perceived integrity. Political engagement intensifies the weight of moral performance. Senators, magistrates, and aspiring office holders must balance ambition with ethical display. Speeches, votes, and public decisions are interpreted as tests of virtue. The wealthy must cultivate an image of wisdom, temperance, and justice, even when their personal inclinations or strategic needs suggest otherwise. Miscalculation can provoke scandal, diminish influence, and threaten fortune. Power and morality are inseparable, and both require constant attention. Psychologically, this constant moral vigilance is exhausting. The wealthy live in a state of heightened awareness, anticipating judgment, evaluating every gesture, and measuring every word. Anxiety, self-doubt, and hypervigilance become habitual. Pleasure is tempered by concern for reputation. Leisure is shadowed by the fear of misperception. Even private interactions carry potential consequences. Morality is never purely personal. It is public property, constantly assessed by peers, dependents, and the wider city. Isolation is both consequence and defense. The rich may retreat from close intimacy to avoid moral scrutiny or misinterpretation. Genuine spontaneity is rare. Every relationship is managed, every interaction calibrated. Companionship, while desirable, often comes with strings of expectation, obligation, or judgment. Luxury and visibility amplify both opportunity and risk. The wealthy are surrounded, yet profoundly alone, perpetually performing virtue for an audience that never sleeps. Historical examples abound of fortunes undone by perceived moral failings. A mismanaged client relationship, a minor legal infraction, or a scandalous rumor can destroy years of careful accumulation and social positioning. The wealthy, aware of this, live in constant preparation, strategizing to prevent mistakes, manage perception, and preserve authority. Even minor oversights are magnified. The higher one rises, the sharper the lens through which every action is examined. By night, in the quiet of their villas, the wealthy may attempt reflection or rest. Marble floors, gardens, and fountains provide sensory comfort, yet the mind remains active, replaying interactions, evaluating decisions, and anticipating consequences. Wealth cushions material needs, but cannot free one from moral labor. Virtue, public perception, and ethical performance are perpetual obligations. Luxury softens life, but it cannot relieve the necessity of constant self-monitoring. The burden of moral performance is invisible yet relentless. Every word, gesture, and choice is evaluated by multiple audiences: family, peers, clients, and society at large. The wealthy must navigate ambition, loyalty, generosity, and self-interest while maintaining an image of virtue. Failure is immediate and often unforgiving. Wealth amplifies both freedom and responsibility, and morality becomes a currency as vital as gold or land. Thus, the rich in ancient Rome live in a world of ceaseless performance. They are admired, envied, and observed in equal measure. Luxury provides comfort and opportunity, yet it intensifies responsibility, obligation, and judgment. The higher the fortune, the more demanding the audience, and the more pervasive the moral labor. Even in isolation, the wealthy are never free from scrutiny. Virtue is both shield and constraint. To be rich is to carry a gilded mask, beautiful yet burdensome, worn daily in a society that measures worth by action, generosity, and ethical perception. Gold cannot grant forgiveness, marble cannot ensure understanding, and power cannot eliminate judgment. Every act, no matter how small, is a performance, and the stakes are personal, social, and eternal. In ancient Rome, the richest live as both masters and actors, constantly performing morality while guarding fortune, family, and reputation from the relentless gaze of society. The picture of wealth in ancient Rome becomes unmistakably clear. Gold, estates, and influence are accompanied by a labyrinth of stress, obligation, and invisible pressures. But there is yet another, more insidious consequence that the rich must endure: the constant threat of betrayal. In a society as politically charged, socially competitive, and morally performative as Rome, even the closest allies can turn into enemies. Trust is fragile, loyalty is transactional, and a single misstep can lead to ruin. The first layer of betrayal is often within the family. Siblings, children, and even spouses, while outwardly loyal, are aware of inheritance, legacy, and opportunity. Ambition runs through the veins of every Roman family, and wealth is both the prize and the battlefield. Subtle manipulation, whispered accusations, or strategic alliances within the household are common. Even minor favoritism can spark resentment, and over time, these tensions can escalate into full-blown conflict. In Rome, blood does not guarantee safety. It only ensures that the stakes are personal and often more dangerous. Clients and dependents, too, present opportunities for betrayal. The patron-client relationship is foundational, but it is also transactional. Clients are loyal when it serves them, observant when opportunities arise, and opportunistic when advantage can be gained. A mismanaged favor, an overlooked obligation, or a perceived slight can transform devotion into manipulation. Betrayal here is subtle, often invisible, and devastating because it comes from those whose allegiance is assumed, not challenged. Political allies are perhaps the most treacherous. The Roman elite operates within a complex web of ambition, envy, and influence. Senators, magistrates, and other prominent figures may present friendship, counsel, or alliance while simultaneously plotting to undermine, replace, or outshine you. Every speech, every vote, every public act is scrutinized not only by peers, but by potential adversaries. A single error, a moment of overconfidence, or an unguarded gesture can be weaponized. Political betrayal is often strategic, calculated, and patient, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Even seemingly loyal friends are not immune. Social bonds in Rome are fluid, contingent, and frequently transactional. Flattery, counsel, and shared indulgence may conceal self-interest. A friend may exploit knowledge of wealth, influence, or vulnerability to gain advantage. Advice may be tailored to serve the advisor rather than the wealthy patron. Subtle misdirection, manipulation of perception, or strategic omission can turn friendship into a liability. In a society where visibility is constant, betrayal is rarely sudden. It simmers, grows, and strikes with precision. Servants and freedmen offer another avenue for danger. While loyalty is expected, ambition and personal interest remain ever present. Knowledge of private affairs, access to valuable information, and proximity to resources make betrayal tempting and feasible. Minor acts of negligence can be deliberate, small errors can become systemic, and minor disputes can escalate into larger manipulation. The wealthy must constantly monitor, manage, and anticipate the actions of those closest to their daily lives. Even intimacy is fraught with risk. The public sphere amplifies these threats. Gossip, rumor, and perception are powerful tools in the hands of rivals. A wealthy Roman may find that a casual comment, a jest, or an association is reframed to serve someone else's ambitions. Betrayal is not always about theft or sabotage. It is about narrative, perception, and influence. The wealthy must constantly control how others interpret actions, while recognizing that narrative can be reshaped, weaponized, and used against them. Economic betrayal is equally dangerous. Investments, trade ventures, and financial alliances are fertile ground for exploitation. Partners may misrepresent opportunities, embezzle resources, or manipulate markets for personal gain. The wealthy must carefully evaluate every transaction, verify every contract, and anticipate every possible breach of trust. Gold can be stolen, mismanaged, or devalued by forces beyond control, yet it is often betrayal, rather than chance, that poses the greatest risk to fortune. Even moral and ethical frameworks are potential vulnerabilities. In a society obsessed with virtue, piety, and honor, Betrayal can take the form of exposure, accusation, or rumor. The wealthy must maintain appearances meticulously. A single moral lapse, whether real or fabricated, can be magnified into scandal. Competitors, opportunists, and even former allies may exploit perceived failures to shift power, diminish reputation, or gain advantage. The rich live under constant observation, aware that the consequences of betrayal extend beyond material loss. The psychological impact of pervasive betrayal is profound. Suspicion becomes habitual, trust is provisional, and every relationship is scrutinized for potential risk. Anxiety, vigilance, and strategic calculation dominate daily life. Even intimate moments are tempered by the awareness that someone, somewhere, may be plotting to take advantage. Wealth provides resources, but it does not shield from the fear of betrayal. It often amplifies it by making the individual more visible and more desirable as a target. Historical examples underscore the danger. Roman history is rife with stories of the wealthy, powerful, and influential who fell due to betrayal. Allies became adversaries. Confidants conspired, and family members turned against one another. Triumphs were overturned, estates seized, and legacies destroyed. In a society where wealth equated to power, betrayal was one of the few forces capable of neutralizing even the most formidable fortunes. The rich must always anticipate treachery, for it can emerge from any quarter, at any time, and in any form. Even everyday decisions carry potential for betrayal. Granting favors, sharing secrets, or extending trust can be exploited. Invitations to feasts, gifts of luxury, or displays of generosity can be reframed to create obligation, envy, or resentment. The wealthy live in a continuous balancing act, weighing the benefits of trust against the risks of exploitation. Every act of openness, kindness, or indulgence carries hidden consequences. Isolation is both a defense and a consequence. The rich, wary of betrayal, often distance themselves from intimacy, candid conversation, and casual interactions. True friendship is rare. Loyalty is frequently conditional. Social bonds are cultivated strategically rather than emotionally. Companionship exists, but it is tempered by vigilance and calculation. Wealth is both a shield and a target, providing comfort while amplifying risk. Ultimately, the threat of betrayal is one of the heaviest burdens of wealth in ancient Rome. Gold and estates provide power and influence, but they also make one a perpetual target. Allies can become enemies, clients can exploit trust, and family can challenge authority. Fortune, status, and reputation are constantly at risk. Survival depends not only on intelligence, strategy, and resources, but on vigilance, foresight, and the ability to anticipate treachery. The wealthy walk a fine line between authority and vulnerability. Every action is scrutinized, every relationship assessed, and every trust potentially betrayed. Wealth attracts attention, envy, and ambition, creating a constant environment of potential exploitation. Even those closest may harbor motives contrary to the wealthy Romans' interests. Gold cannot prevent deception. Estates cannot secure loyalty. Influence cannot guarantee protection. By night, in their villa adorned with marble, frescoes, and treasures, the wealthy ponder the precariousness of trust. Every conversation, alliance, and favor is replayed in the mind, analyzed for motives and consequences. Luxury cannot ease this vigilance, nor can status provide immunity. To be rich is to be constantly aware that betrayal can emerge anywhere, from anyone, and at any moment. Every relationship carries potential, every gesture is scrutinized, and every trust is provisional. And so, the richest of Rome live with a paradox: immense power paired with relentless vulnerability, boundless opportunity shadowed by constant threat. Fortune attracts loyalty and admiration, yes, but it also invites treachery. To navigate this reality requires not only wealth and influence, but strategic cunning, emotional vigilance, and the persistent awareness that betrayal is never a question of if, but when. In Rome, wealth is both reward and risk, and betrayal is one of the cruelest, most unavoidable weights to bear. The pattern is unmistakable. Wealth in ancient Rome is simultaneously a blessing and a trap. Luxury, influence, estates, and gold provide comfort, opportunity, and status. Yet every advantage carries invisible burdens, invisible pressures, and invisible threats. If betrayal, fragility, responsibility, and moral performance are relentless, then the final, perhaps cruelest layer is the sheer isolation wealth imposes. The rich are surrounded by people, yet profoundly alone. Every relationship is calculated, every interaction carries risk, and every moment of privacy is fleeting. The gilded life is one of constant observation, subtle manipulation, and a creeping sense of solitude that no marble wall or golden artifact can erase. Even among family, the wealthy often feel alone. Siblings, children, and spouses are entwined with fortune, inheritance, and legacy. Love and loyalty exist, but they are interlaced with ambition, expectation, and judgment. Children observe behavior for lessons, favor, or opportunity. Siblings measure advantage, anticipating shifts in fortune or inheritance. Spouses may wield social influence subtly or overtly. In a household where wealth dictates power, intimacy is tempered by caution. True connection is rare, and trust is always measured. Clients and dependents further complicate the landscape of isolation. The wealthy provide for their networks, offering protection, sustenance, and opportunity. Yet these relationships are inherently transactional. Every favor granted, every resource allocated, and every act of generosity is cataloged, interpreted, and sometimes exploited. The rich are never fully certain of loyalty, and every interaction carries potential strings, obligations, or hidden motives. Social proximity does not equal companionship. It often amplifies solitude by reminding the wealthy of the conditional nature of human attention. Political life, too, reinforces isolation. Senators, magistrates, and public figures surround the wealthy with counsel, competition, and observation. Alliances shift with expedience, and friends can transform into rivals overnight. The wealthy cannot allow themselves complete openness. Strategy and calculation govern even casual conversation. Even victories are isolated moments, celebrated with caution and suspicion. Prestige brings visibility, yes, but it also magnifies the inability to truly relax, leaving the wealthy separated by circumstance from authentic camaraderie. Isolation extends to leisure and indulgence. Hunting, banquets, theater, and games, while meant for enjoyment, are never entirely private or free from judgment. Every gesture, every choice, and every display of wealth is scrutinized. Guests, clients, and observers watch not only for entertainment but for opportunity. The wealthy may seek pleasure, yet they must constantly measure optics, anticipate envy, and manage perception. Even in spaces designed for comfort, solitude is inescapable because vigilance never sleeps. Servants, freedmen, and household staff, while familiar, do not offer companionship. Their loyalty is pragmatic, their presence a combination of service and observation. Even casual interactions are bound by hierarchy, obligation, and visibility. Privacy is limited. Freedom is always contextual. The rich may command their household, but they rarely escape its gaze. Observers inhabit every room, monitor every action, and interpret every gesture, intensifying a sense of solitude that no wealth can counteract. The psychological impact of isolation is pervasive. Awareness of betrayal, moral obligation, social performance, and fragility generates anxiety, hypervigilance, and strategic thinking as constant companions. The wealthy are rarely able to act spontaneously. Every choice carries consequence, every word invites scrutiny, and every relationship contains hidden risk. Luxury provides comfort, but it does not ease the mind. Isolation is as much a function of wealth as it is of ambition. The higher one rises, the more solitary one becomes. Even friendship among peers is tempered by suspicion. Other wealthy Romans are competitors as much as companions. Conversations are measured, alliances conditional, and trust limited. Social gatherings, while vibrant and ostentatious, often conceal rivalry and calculation. The wealthy must balance camaraderie with caution, warmth with pragmatism. The richer a Roman becomes, the fewer opportunities exist for genuine connection. Visibility brings admiration and envy, but it also reinforces solitude. Public scrutiny amplifies isolation further. Every action is observed, catalogued, and interpreted by peers, clients, and society at large. A minor faux pas, an ill-considered statement, or a perceived error can ripple through social networks, undermining influence, reputation, or status. The wealthy are constantly aware of this scrutiny, which magnifies self-consciousness and reinforces the separation from those around them. Even moments of relaxation are tinged with the awareness of eyes watching, waiting, and judging. Historical evidence underscores the loneliness of wealth. The most powerful Roman families, despite grandeur and influence, frequently experienced inner tension, familial strife, and social suspicion. Private lives were invaded by obligations, political necessity, and social expectation. The rich were surrounded by abundance and spectacle, yet the intimacy of true connection was rare. Many retreated to solitude within villas, private gardens, or distant estates, seeking relief that was often partial and temporary. Luxury was a comfort, not a cure. Isolation also extends to legacy. Wealthy Romans are conscious of how they will be remembered. Every action, favor, and public gesture contributes to reputation, often more than to personal satisfaction. Their children, heirs, and followers may carry forward fortune, but the sense of individual significance remains heavily mediated by perception. Even in contemplation of death, the rich must consider social memory, legal inheritance, and historical legacy. Solitude is reinforced by the burden of perpetuity, the awareness that one's life is as much a public narrative as a personal journey. Psychologically, isolation intersects with fear, vulnerability, and responsibility. The wealthy must manage estates, finances, social networks, and personal conduct while anticipating betrayal, envy, and misfortune. Each layer of burden adds weight, while visibility prevents complete escape. Marble walls, gardens, and luxury cannot shield against loneliness, just as gold cannot buy immunity from anxiety. The higher one climbs, the more acutely one feels the separation between self and society. In the end, the rich are trapped in a paradox. Wealth provides influence, power, and comfort, yet it simultaneously enforces detachment, vigilance, and solitude. They are surrounded by people who depend on, admire, envy, or observe them. Yet connection is often conditional, strategic, or ephemeral. The more luxurious the environment, the more isolated the individual becomes. Every relationship is mediated by social expectation, moral obligation, or strategic calculation, leaving the wealthy both visible and profoundly alone. By nightfall, when villas are quiet and fountains trickle under moonlight, the wealthy Roman may recline among treasures, yet still feel the persistent weight of isolation. Silence is not peace, it is vigilance in repose. The mind cannot fully rest because every relationship, every obligation, every potential betrayal remains active in memory. Wealth is simultaneously a shield, a cage, and a magnifier of solitude. Ultimately, this isolation is one of the cruelest consequences of being rich in ancient Rome. It is invisible to observers, yet inescapable for the participant. Luxury softens life, but cannot replace companionship. Influence provides power, but cannot guarantee trust, and gold secures comfort, but not emotional freedom. To be rich is to walk a life surrounded yet separate, admired yet alone, celebrated yet burdened by the perpetual awareness of visibility, expectation, and human ambition.